Chair Eric Sand will call the virtual Building Code Structures Board meeting of November 3rd, 2021 in order at 9:32. Melissa, can you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Andy Dykeman.
Present.
Stephen Forster.
Present.
Brenda Hartzog.
Here.
Gary Hakenen.
Here.
Randy Samuelson.
Here.
Cale Zuslag, excused. Vice Chair Eric Schmidt.
Here.
And Chair Eric Sandoval.
Here. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
And with that, we have a quorum. And let's take a look at the agenda and the order of business today. We might got the call to order, roll call, approval of agenda, and other business, approval of the draft minutes of August 4th, 2021. The date of the next scheduled meeting on January 19th, 2022. Board review of the 2022 calendar and election of board officers. Is there any other agenda items or discussions related to the agenda that the board members might wish to talk about? All right, with that, I've ruled that the agenda and order of business is approved. The next item would be the draft minutes from August the 4th, 2021. I had a chance to take a look at the video and review the draft minutes from that. And thank you very much, Eric Schmidt, for standing in for me. I really appreciate that. My father's doing well, and it's all good. So, do you have any comments on those minutes? Be glad to hear those now. Hearing none, I've ruled that the draft minutes of August 4th are final. Okay, the next item is the scheduled meeting. We had an earlier request from Melissa to see if we might be available on off schedule January 19th. This is again a method to help us review the committee minutes or review the committee information related to the next code. So we're a little bit off cycle on that. Doesn't change the rest of the schedule, but just wanted to announce that January 19th time. Same schedule that we have where we start at 9:30, and it's the same virtual method. Right. And after that, we have the routine meeting dates. February 2nd, May 4th, August 3rd, and November 2nd. So we're back on track for those regularly scheduled times. All right, we're moving right through this agenda. So the next item here, I'd like to ask Tyler Glaze, policy analyst, to lead the board in the election of the chair and vice chair. Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Tyler Glaze, policy analyst for the division. So generally how elections for new board members works is if you have a member of the board has an idea for a person they would like to nominate, they will so state that they will state the name of the person they wish to nominate, and that must then be seconded by another member of the board. And that person presumably will then say, you know, if they're present, they will then say, I accept the nomination. And we will then go through to see if there are any other individuals that will be nominated for that same board position. So continue that process if there are multiple individuals nominated for that position. Then we will take those individuals, and if they would like to speak up and say a small piece about who they are, why they feel they would like to be a part of the board, just a general description of their qualifications, that sort of thing. If they wish to make a speech, if you will, they're free to do so. And that will continue for all the individuals nominated for that position. And then it will be a board vote. As we're doing roll call voting during these remote times, we'll just go one by one through those individuals and take the vote. So that will proceed for the board members that the board positions that we are replacing.
Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate that. With that, board members, and have any questions or discussion items for Tyler in regards to the methods that we might be able to go forward with on this board election? All right. Then with that, then we it says here that you would be working with that, Tyler. Is that correct? You would orchestrate that portion of the meeting, or is that my charge? Not sure about that.
Mr. Chair, if I'm happy to handle it if you like, but it's your call. You're the chair of this meeting, but I'm happy to take charge of that.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead then?
Okay. Thank you, members of the board. Again, Tyler Glaze, policy analyst for the division. Is there anyone that you would like to nominate for the open board positions?
Yeah. Hi, Tyler. Steve Forrester here. I'd like to nominate Vice Chair Eric Schmidt to move up to the chair position. Thank you.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the nomination. I'm sorry, what am I supposed to say? I will accept that nomination.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you.
Do we have any other nominations for the position of chair? All right. It does not sound like we have any other nominations for the position of chair. So, Mr. Schmidt, if you'd like to say a small piece about yourself and why you would like the position or what your qualifications are, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, we'll proceed to a vote.
I guess, again, I appreciate the nomination. As you know, I've served as vice chair for this committee for Eric for the past a couple of years, I think it's been. So appreciate his leadership and certainly learned a lot through this process and feel comfortable serving as chair should the votes go that way. So we appreciate the opportunity. Happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Excellent. And just to check one more time, do we have any other nominations for the position of chair? All right, hearing none. Debbie, could you please take a vote? Or excuse me, Melissa, could you please take a vote?
Yes. Andy Dykman.
Aye.
Steve Forster.
Aye.
Brenda Hartzog.
Aye.
Gary Hakenen.
Aye.
Randy Samuelson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Eric Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair Eric Sandoval.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. And I believe we had one other position open, that's correct?
Yeah, the vice chair.
Excellent. All right, so now that the vice chair position is open, do we have any nominations for the position of vice chair?
Hi, Mr. Chair, Gary Hakenen. I want to nominate Andrew Dykman as the new vice chair of this committee.
Tyler, Steve Forrester here. I will second that nomination.
Thanks, Gary and Steve. I accept.
Excellent. Do we have any other individuals that the board wishes to nominate for that position? All right, hearing none. Mr. Dykman, would you like to say anything on your behalf?
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. Yeah, I really appreciate the nomination. Looking forward to an opportunity to continue my involvement in the committee and the board. I've been an active member of the advisory committee and the board for a number of years, and enjoy the process, and looking forward to many more. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And do we have any other individuals that we wish to nominate for the vice chair position? Hearing none, Melissa, can you please take a vote?
Andy Dykeman,
Abstain?
Steve Forster,
Aye.
Brenda Hartzog,
Aye.
Gary Heikkinen,
Aye.
Randy Samuelson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Eric Schmidt,
Aye.
Chair Eric Sandoval.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you taking care of our board member elections, and after this meeting, we'll start the new board officers at our next meeting. So on January 19th, we'll be prepared to have Eric Schmidt as our new chair and Andy Dykeman as our vice chair. Thanks very much, all of you board members, for helping make this a successful election, and I appreciate all your volunteer participation. The next board item here is Tony Rocco, Structural Program Chief, Policy and Technical Services. Tony, could you please give us a structural program update?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Tony Rocco with the division. Just a quick program update this morning for the board. The primary focus right now, as you all know, for our technical program is the 2022 OSSC process. And just as a reminder, our OSSC covers 3 national model codes. I always like to stress that. So the IBC, the new construction provisions of the IFC, and the IEBC. The code committee selected by this board has been working hard on developing recommendations regarding this 2022 iteration of the OSSC. We've completed 2 all-day meetings so far, and we likely have 3 or 4 meetings left to complete the remaining recommendations. And we anticipate sharing those recommendations with the board at that January board date, as Chair Sandoval mentioned. And again, just a big thanks to all of those committee members volunteering their time to the process. We couldn't do it without them. So big thanks to them. And that's really it for my update on the program. As always, welcome any questions. Happy to try my best to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that update. And again, very successful committee work on the 2022 OSSC. I'll open up the discussion questions for Tony if any board members would like to ask additional information or have comments. Yes, Eric Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rocco. Just a separate question. Appreciate the update on the code committee, what's working as it's progressing. Just curious in terms of all the changes with Chapter 1 that we've put in place the past year, and all the great work that you and others at DCD have done for many months on that, and not only the development work, but the training work, getting the information out. Just kind of curious in general, how's that all going? Is that going pretty well overall from a state perspective with all the Chapter 1 implementation, either questions or issues that have come up related to that?
Through the chair, yes. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for the question. Yeah, so far, I think on the technical side, the feedback has been great. I think, a lot of clarifications were made through that Chapter 1. Again, as we look to the 2022 OSSC iteration, Chapter 1's a part of that. So, of course, this board will be looking at that again, in come January. There have been some general questions around scoping and some paths through the OSSC that I think we're dealing with and addressing very clearly through this committee process. And Chair Sandoval might be able to comment on that as well. But overall, I think the feedback has been great.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Thanks, Eric. I would just say that the committee work has been really good. We have provided some offsets to mechanical group and maybe bringing those decisions back to the board in January. We haven't quite settled on those, and that may result in additional ideas that we would have to work through in January, or it may be a deferred item. We'll have to kind of wait and see how that goes. Steve Forster, you had your hand up. Board member Steve Forster, do you have any questions for Tony Rocco?
Yeah, one comment, one question. Comment for Tony. Great job on the actually on the Chapter 1 training. Eric prompted me to remember that. So yeah, you do a great job with that video training. For anybody who hasn't watched it, that is not easy to pull off. So I thought you did a fantastic job. I actually learned a lot from it, and so nicely done. And I look forward to more Tony Rocco BCD building code videos in the future. Question on the code development. Just curious if there's been any significant or controversial issues, anything that could help us prepare that you've seen in those first couple of sessions. Is there anything that we should maybe take a look at and be ready for at our next meeting?
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Forster. Thank you for the comments, and then also for the question. There have been, I wouldn't say controversial, right? So, I mean, this is technical code stuff. So we're looking at, national model codes. There are some really good proposed changes that we're working through. There is a current clarification that we're going to be making regarding care facilities located within dwellings. And so we've really kind of had a great dialogue at the committee level about that. We're working on some language. Right before this meeting, I was working on it. I'll be right back on it right after this meeting. And I wouldn't say that that's controversial. I think it's going to be helpful. It's going to be providing greater flexibility as far as construction standards for these facilities that are permitted to be located within dwellings by licensure, and then pointing them back to the construction standards of the residential code while still maintaining, minimum safety, so domestic residential sprinkler system, and then accessibility for those, care facility kind of business uses. So we're dealing with that. That's something upcoming on the next meeting. We also have some clarification, some good cleanup regarding survivability of the ERC systems. So they used to be ERRC, now they're ERCC, and we've proposed those to the committee. Eric McMullen from our team did an excellent job putting that together, and that's aligning us more in line with the national model and with NFPA 1221. So really good change there. I think overall, I wouldn't say anything controversial, but there are some changes that we will, of course, cover in as much detail as you'd like at that January meeting. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Steve. Do you have any additional questions, board member Steve Forster? Any other board members would like to ask Tony some questions or comment on the work this last session? All right, hearing none. Thanks for again, Tony. Appreciate the update. The last two items here, the communications unfinished business. There's no items on the agenda for those two. We've gone through board business, roll call, business, draft build minutes, scheduled meeting, board update, and officers' public comments, board updates, new business. Item number 6, board to provide feedback and approval regarding proposed board changes to adopted amendments to the 2019 OSSC structural board needing to comply with the new requirements established in 2021 Oregon Law, Chapter 360. To my sheet just to make sure I haven't missed something here. It looks like we need a motion on this item, and Tyler Glaze, our policy analyst, Tony Rocco, will be working together on this. Tyler will introduce the item. Tony will give details and answer any questions. So Tyler, could you please introduce this item and give us more clarity on this new business item? Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair Sandoval, members of the board. Tyler Glaze, policy analyst for the division again. If you look on your agenda, there is a memorandum, but as you may recall, there was a bill called HB 2605, which recently passed the Oregon legislature and was signed into law by the governor. The bill takes effect on January 1st, 2022, and there's a copy of the enrolled bill in the board packet if you'd like to take a look at that. The bill imposes tsunami design standards for certain buildings and other structures. It requires that sites for new structures be evaluated for vulnerability to seismic geologic hazards if structures are major structures or are designated as having specified tsunami risk for design. It also requires the developer of a building designated as having specified tsunami risk for design to request a determination, scientific evidence, and recommendations from the State Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. The bill further requires the State Department of Geology and Mineral Industries to report annually regarding requests, determinations, and suggestions. So in complying with this new law, it will require the Building Codes Division to engage in rulemaking. The division appoints the Building Code Structures Board as a rulemaking advisory committee under ORS 183333. The division has taken steps to identify the rules it believes will be affected by the adoption of the new code, and it has prepared to propose changes to the new rule language. The rule language. The division seeks the board's input on the proposed rules, and if the board recommends them, approval of the division to engage in rulemaking. The proposed rules are included in the board packet. In addition, the division seeks board recommendations on whether the rule changes will have a fiscal impact. If so, the division seeks to understand the extent of that impact and whether the impact will be significant for small businesses. So if you look below, there are several options. The first would potentially be provide input on rulemaking and any fiscal impact, approve the proposed rules, and forward to the administrator for rulemaking and subsequent adoption, with the finding that the added cost, if any, is necessary to the health and safety of the occupants or the public, or necessary to conserve scarce resources. Alternatively, provide input on rulemaking and any fiscal impact, amend and approve the proposed rules, and forward to the administrator for rulemaking and subsequent adoption, with the finding that the added cost, if any, is necessary to the health and safety of the occupants or the public, or necessary to conserve scarce resources. And lastly, provide input on rulemaking and any fiscal impact and disapprove the proposed rules, recommending an alternative to comply with the requirements of HB 2605. And I believe Tony Rocco has some more information to provide on this that is of more technical nature.
Thank you, Ty. I appreciate that. Yeah, Tony, could you please give us some more additional information on the technical nature of the proposal?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, for the record, Tony Rocco with the division. So just kind of a high-level summary of this agenda item 6. These provisions were previously captured in Appendix O of the 2019 OSSC, as you may recall, and it was a local adoption allowance. There was some additional language in there providing these local communities kind of broad flexibility. So as we look at what's before you today, we're aligning the 19 OSSC with the statutory changes. This would be effective January 1st, 2022, as Tyler mentioned. And to give you some background, the proposal, the amendments in front of you, the technical language, it was the lion's share of the work was done by our program engineer, Jeremy Williams, and our coordinator, Laura Burns, preparing those interim amendments. They were coordinated and run past SEAO representation. We discussed it quite a bit, about what the amendments were doing and how we were taking those pieces from statute and making sure that we were aligning directly with that governing statute. And really what it does is it streamlines designation of risk categories and provides a statewide approach for tsunami load design considerations for our state. So as always, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the proposed amendments. Thank you.
Yes, Tony, thanks very much. The technical piece really helps out. I know this is something we discussed in the last cycle of the code, and it was understood that the purview of that was within a different department. So I appreciate the movement here and the fact that you've run that by the Structural Engineers Association of Oregon. And I think I really appreciate the hard work you did to be able to make this language align with the way that the ASCE E7 is connecting to it. And so I'd like to, at this point, welcome any comments, questions from board members in seeking clarity prior to the proposed motions. Yes, Eric Smith, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tony, for the presentation, and Tyler as well. And I do appreciate that you engaged with Structural Engineers Association on this. So that's I appreciate that. I am curious, was there any additional outreach or engagement with the building officials, especially for the areas that are impacted by the code that's being proposed? Just curious.
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for the question. In this case, there wasn't. It was more about because the statute changes, the statute kind of occupies the field here, and it dictates how this is going to be applied. So it was really more about just getting the proper pieces in place. So typically, we would absolutely kind of roll proposed amendments out to our other local government partners, but in this case, we did not, because it was more of just a linear statutory alignment. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric Smith. Gary Heitman.
Yeah, maybe a real quick question. We have an OSSC review committee going on right now, or have they, or will they also make a review of this new language?
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Heikkinen. So it depends on your actions today. So we've been not including this yet on the code review committee's review docket or their matrix, kind of their roadmap. But depending on the actions of the board today, then we'll roll it into that proposal when they review Chapter 16, and we'll clarify that this is, again, statutory alignment, and it was just either approved or amended and approved or by the Building Code Structures Board. Hope that helps.
That helps. Thanks, Tony.
Yes, Board Member Steve Forster, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, another question for, I don't know if it's better for Tony or Tyler. I'll let them decide. But so if we, looking at the options, if we passed option number 1 to approve the proposed rules as is without amendments and move it forward to rulemaking, can you clarify if in that rulemaking process there's still opportunity for public input, stakeholder input, in consideration by the division?
Tony, I'm happy to answer this. Tyler Glaze, with the division, through the chair. Yes, Board Member Forster, there is opportunity in the rulemaking process to engage the public, so there will be a hearing, a public hearing for any comments that individuals may have on the proposed rulemaking, and then it will, from that period, we will take all those comments into advisement and respond to them in writing later on. So there will still be time for individuals to come in and speak on those.
Perfect, thank you. That's what I presumed, but just wanted to confirm. And so if we did, if this did not go through the review committee, really my intent of the question was, is there still a stakeholder process in play? And thank you. Sounds like, yes, there still will be opportunity for stakeholder input as well as further division review on any of the comments if we went with option 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions, comments from board members here? All right. Again, just to recap everything we've got here, we've got this this new information that's available for division to use for the tsunami loads. They've incorporated this as a proposal to our board for recommendation, and within that, there's a technical aspect of that for the model changes, the code changes to allow that to connect with this new scope, basically, for the division. And so our movement today, regardless of what that is, will provide the next direction, the next place where this will go. So at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion as there's no additional discussion. Do we have a motion from one of the board members? Yes, Steve Forrester, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve option number 1, which is provide input on rulemaking, any fiscal impact, approve the proposed rules and forward to the administrator for rulemaking and subsequent adoption, with the finding that the added cost, if any, is necessary to the health and safety occupants or the public or necessary to conserve scarce resources.
Thank you very much for that proposed motion. As we're in parliamentary methodology, we don't need a second. So at this point, I'd like to move into a vote for support of this option proposal. Is there, can we do a roll call on that, please? Melissa?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Andy Dykeman,
Aye.
Steve Forster,
Aye.
Brenda Hartzog,
Aye.
Gary Hakinen,
Aye.
Randy Samuelson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Eric Schmidt,
Aye.
Chair Eric Sandoval.
Aye.
Motion
Yeah.
carries.
With that, motion carries. Appreciate that, Melissa. Thank you very much. At this point, I'd also like to invite an understanding of a possible fiscal impact so that Tyler can take that back to the group. So again, we can have some discussion on this item and determine how that fiscal impact might happen to the small community. So I'll open up discussion at this point. Is there any discussion about what this might do financially for those communities that are affected by this proposed change to our code? I'm not hearing anything. My thought is that in some ways it gives better direction to our communities that are affected by tsunami, and it gives some clarity about that. In my opinion, the costs that were incurred before having to do buildings within the zone were unclear and difficult to determine the best path forward. There was a lot of conflict with how this was implemented. And this clarifies this methodology and provides an opportunity for those local communities to have this written word that allows that to happen. So I think, in allowing the legislative word to come into this localized community through the code, in fact, has no financial impact. Potentially it has a decreasing impact because it causes less scheduling and administrative problems. And so may actually use less resources in the local community. The actual financial costs of the building structures with the ASC 7 is a pretty standardized methodology. I don't see any fiscal impact there for the actual building. So administratively, I think it's a reduction in costs, and be open to the other board members' thoughts on that. Okay, with that, I'd like to ask Tyler, is that going to be sufficient for you in terms of how that financial impact might occur?
Chair Sandoval, this is Tyler Glaze, policy analyst for the division. Obviously, any information that we could get is appreciated, but if that's what we have, that's what we have. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, so again, this is going to move forward into the next. I just ask a refresher from Tony in terms of how this action would go forward with the committee. So if you could comment on that, I'd appreciate that, Tony.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Tony Rocco with the division. So this is a proposed interim amendment to the 2019 OSSC because the statute that governs this becomes effective January 1st. So this would be, again, once it goes through the remaining public process, it would eventually be an amendment to the 2019 OSSC. So we'll have insert pages. We'll likely notify it for our local government partners and other interested stakeholders. And then it will be an interim amendment. And then that language will be also included in the 2022 OSSC process. So on the committee side, we'll be looking at essentially the same language that you're looking at today, and we can talk about the statutory alignment and what prompted these changes. I hope that helps.
It does help. Appreciate that. Is there any other follow-up questions for Tony on that statement? No. Okay, great. So again, going back to our agenda and moving to item 8, announcements, no announcements. Item 9, we have, oh, yes, Randy, go ahead. Sorry. I saw your hand.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair. Randy Samuelson here, member. I would just like to, we at Hassel Handicap Awareness and Support League are recruiting for Miss Wheelchair of Oregon. Until our current person took control, it had been 20 years since Oregon had a representative. It's a wonderful tool for advocacy for people with that use wheelchairs 100% of the time. Basically, you have to be a female over the age of 21, use a wheelchair 100% of the time, resident of Oregon for 6 months. And if anybody's interested, you can contact me at my email, which is randy@hasselonline.org, or our current member, Leslie Keller, who is a wonderful mentor for this. Just wanted to get the word out there and let you all know if you might notice a person, a female, that might want to advocate for folks with disabilities. And thank you so much, Chair.
Yes, Randy, thank you very much for that information. Again, could you announce the naming of the position? I didn't quite hear it often enough. Is it Mrs. or Miss? I can't remember the rest of the.
Yeah, Ms. Wheelchair America, and it had been 20 years previous since we'd had a representative in Oregon, and Leslie and I discussed it, and she took the bull by the horns and went for it, and it's been a wonderful experience, and it's a heck of a great way to advocate for people that are have mobility issues. And,
thanks very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, so there's an announcement for you. Again, it'll be a part of this public recording, so that people who've been hearing this would be able to hear as well. So if you have additional support or broadcasting, you can do it. I'm sure Randy would appreciate that. So with that, I would, with no further business, I announce the meeting adjourned at 10:10, and appreciate all your hard work here, board members, and we'll see you in January. Talk to you soon.